Hi, HBO.
I'm Nicholas Hoult.
And I'm Lily Collins, and we're starring in the new movie, Tolkien.
The film tells the incredible story of the life of J.R.R. Tolkien.
We're excited to share an exclusive first look from the film with you. Tell me a story.
It's a story about journeys.
The journeys we take to prove ourselves.
It's about adventures. It's about potent magic, a magic beyond anything anyone has ever felt before. About what it means to love, and to be loved.
About courage.
It's about fellowship.
Do you remember the first time that you read or came across Tolkien's work?
I think I was probably in high school when I was able to fully digest it instead of just watching the films.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so easy to jump to conclusions about just watching the film and thinking that you know the world so well. And then when you read the books, you're just so immersed in it in a different way. Yeah. What about you?
I first read The Hobbit when we were filming About a Boy because the directors of that gave it to me to read. So that was my first encounter with his work.
They gave it to you?
Yeah, they gave it to me. So I've still got that copy of The Hobbit up on my bookshelf at home.
Amazing.
And then it's kind of all come around full circle. I was a fan of the books from then, and then I was a huge fan of the films as well, the original Lord of the Rings films. It's obviously a huge honour to get the chance to portray someone who's a literary icon, one of my heroes, but also played such a huge part in my life, and I think lots of people's.
Turned up the new man, Tolkien.
It's pronounced Tolkien, son.
As a first-time reader of his work, you necessarily go, oh, I wonder what that story is.
That was the amazing thing about reading this script was I didn't know much about Tolkien's life. I was aware of his work and a big fan of it, so to see everything that happened to him in his life, his experiences, his relationships, and then how that translated into his work and to craft like these incredibly creative, imaginative worlds that he did. It was just magical to see all that come to life and kind of get to experience it through his eyes.
Since childhood, I have been fascinated with language. I made stories, legends.
I've always loved the story behind the story of things, especially ones that I've grown up loving. So to now be a part of the other side of how the story was created was super fascinating.
Boys, we are going to face some difficult times.
Where are we going?
Birmingham.
I don't want to go to Birmingham.
We chose this time frame, us showing Tolkien's younger years, is that so much happened that kind of grew and made Tolkien who he is.
We focused the loss of his parents, finding friendship, finding love, and how that influenced him as a writer.
Your dying mother made a sacrifice, and she trusted your future and education to me.
In this story, you meet Father Francis, who kind of takes him under his wing and puts him up in a boarding home sort of situation with Mrs. Faulkner.
King Edward's? That's a very good school. You'll be mixing with the cream of Birmingham's bonne famille.
Little Edith and little Tolkien meet in an orphanage run by Mrs. Faulkner. Both of them have lost their parents, and right away they bond on that.
Tolkien falls instantly in love with Edith and decides that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her.
What about you?
What about me?
There must be something that you want.
To be free.
When Tolkien first went to King Edward's, he doesn't fit in because he doesn't have the good fortune that these other boys have, and they kind of single him out for that. They formed this wonderful friendship after a slightly rough beginning, really push each other and encourage each other and have a lot of fun.
We'd like to make amends by inviting you to tea. These boys sort of think he shares the same sort of interests as we do. They all clicked because of that.
We should form a club, a brotherhood.
The TCBS.
The TCBS.
And change the world through the power of art.
TCBS stands for Tea Club and Barovian Society.
Shapes in the mist, it is long since I saw you. Pale hands and faces, quiet eyes, crowned with a garland that dead hands wrought you.
It was Greek in a way, the love of comrades.
It's very emotive. You should be proud.
These two people didn't have blood-related family, but they made their friends their family.
They are challenged by each other, but there's also this deep acceptance of self from one another to the other that I think is what we all strive for.
Showing how those boys got inspired by each other was something I strongly believe that built Tolkien to be who he later was.
Tolkien, you absolute clown. This is your chance, can't you see? Your Gothic professor is encouraging you to defect.
What are you talking about?
He's enticing you into his class.
The group dynamic is a really fun one because they've spent so much of their lives together and they've grown up together, so they kind of have that shorthand.
To all the future TCBS meetings.
Cheers, gentlemen.
May I? Helheimer! Helheimer!
Helheimer is where you would go if you're a warrior who dies outside of battle. So the aim is dying nobly in battle, not comfortably in your bed. The TCBS kind of take that term, Helheimr, and use it as a motto.
If you look at any of his mythologies, and of course more in Lord of the Rings, it is about four boys going into a dark and evil journey.
Helheimr!
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 Looking at Tolkien and bringing his story into life, part of the importance was to make that happen in the film, to escape into his worlds, to feel the same kind of fan emotion that I had when I was a small boy reading those books. Very early on, I wanted to somehow show those darker moments of his life and how his imagination is being built, and at the same time creating the imagery, for that was something very important to us.
They insert this fantastical, surrealistic world into very humanistic, natural piece. Through, Tolkien's drawings he does throughout the film, through his language that he uses, which is a huge part of who he was and what inspired the stories.
The reason for creating these worlds and these people is because he wanted to create languages. So suddenly this entire kind of mythical place developed from just basically wanting to create a language.
Helheimr. Professor? Look, full, complete languages. It's everything.
And the drawings?
Well, what is language for? It's not just the naming of things, is it? It's the lifeblood of a culture, a people.
The thing that just blew me away was trying to read through his work and being like, how did this come from someone's mind, the imagination?
To follow the wolves, to fight amongst each other like the cubs, the fates rear ravenous.
The Norns came to
Wilderness
shape out
far
fate
away.
for that kingling. They said he'd be the fighter most famed and be reckoned the best of princelings. They twisted fast the strands of fate, unsettled the strongholds in Brown.
Can you tell me about Edith Bratt?
When I heard about Edith's story, I had never known the woman behind Tolkien.
She's being raised by a woman who is training her to be the utmost proper young woman of society and teaching her to play piano and be entertaining, and in comes this young man who's all about this other world and storytelling.
It was a forbidden love story. They had to do all their meetings in secret in Grand Café.
The scene that I really remember shooting was obviously Grand Café.
Yeah.
And that's a lovely moment for Edith where it calls him out on actually, without meaning, the sound doesn't mean anything alone. And I think that's a really lovely sentiment which kind of spurs him to change his creativity.
A word isn't beautiful just because of its sound. Listen. Hand. That might be a beautiful word,
Yes, it is.
but it means so much more because of what we associate it with. Touch.
And I think that that's also a really great moment that kind of shows their relationship perfectly, in that she's not afraid to call him out and say when she thinks he's wrong, and I think that that challenges him, and vice versa. I ironically had actually auditioned to play one of the elven characters. Obviously didn't get it, but then ended up weirdly playing Edith, who inspired the elven characters.
One of the most inspiring moments in Tolkien's life was when Edith danced to him. That actually inspired the story of Baron Luthien. And she danced in a forest. And if you think about Tolkien's love for trees, and seeing two of his great loves being together in a scene, it was something that very early on I wanted to picture.
When I was speaking to Dome about her and just the magic that she brings into Tolkien's life and how she is very much the one that helps inspire him to continue on with his love of language.
She took him to the opera to expand his mind on what that was and that type of music, and it was about a ring.
Wagner wrote it in 4 acts. It starts with a ring, a magical ring which can rule the world and which is forged by a dwarf. But to harness the ring's power, you first have to renounce love.
I must ask you to have nothing more to do with Miss Bratt. You have a duty to fulfill, and you will fulfill it, Ronald.
War! England's at war!
Their love was so powerful and incredible to meet at such a young age. Kind of from outside circumstances be split apart and then still be that dedicated to each other to kind of reunite.
I have to go.
Stay alive and come back to me.
It was just that everlasting love, the undeniability that they were meant to be together. And it's one of those love stories that you could easily write off as being just a movie. But in fact, it's so true.
There's this warmth in Lily I feel that wasn't Edith Bratt.
Lily's fantastic. I think she brings such a grit and beauty and grace to that character. Dome's done an incredible job with the casting, I think, on this movie. If it's cast well, then the people kind of fall into their roles.
Nick is, he's very playful in life, and he's a really, really good man. He wants to take care of everybody on set, and I think that very much is also something that is inherently Tolkien.
Dome is just, he's a remarkable director to work with.
Yeah.
When I first met him, I loved his passion
and was inspired by his take on the story he wanted to tell about Tolkien's life.
and his knowledge and also his freedom to just try things and go with ideas. And the way that he threw himself into this and his understanding of this story and all the characters was remarkable.
There was just that element of just play with it. Like, if we get what's scripted, great, but then just keep going, have fun.
Yeah,
and
creating that dynamic that makes it feel real.
yeah, and that we felt so trusting of.
So what do you normally talk about?
We talk about all sorts of really interesting things.
Really interesting. Interesting and fascinating, and that's when we're not trying to change the world.
What they've done with the script is really refreshing. They've made him really human, talking, and you just imagine, stuffy old man or whatever, but you realise that he was a young man making mistakes and falling in love and getting in fights, and just like everyone does.
It's a story about perseverance and encouragement and finding your voice, and hopefully people will be inspired by it.
We've always set out to make a film that isn't just for die-hard Tolkien history buffs. We want to make a movie that everyone can get into. The film is an emotional story that has all the themes and feelings that Tolkien's work did have. The friendship, the love, the battle of light against darkness.
And it's such a beautiful and magical love story. Tolkien loving one woman from youth to eternity. And I relate to that story of fellowship. Him as an orphan boy finding friends and going to war with them and seeing horrifying images that haunt him for the rest of his life. And him later on putting that in his creation.
It's a period drama, but at the same time it's so modern and so now because the common themes are timeless.
This is more than just a friendship. It's an alliance, an invincible alliance.
It's about camaraderie and friendship, being tenacious and passionate. There's something for everyone, and I'm excited for people to get to know the real story.